Okay, we've got all of our Maya preferences set up. We've got our scale convention established. We've set up our working units and our grid options and all of this stuff, and we're ready to actually start modeling. In this case, I've got an image that I'm going to use as a guide or a template. And the way to do that is to load the image onto something called an image plane. And an image plane in Maya is a special object. And it's really helpful because the image plane will always display the image whether you're in a wireframe view or in a shaded view. So you don't want to just create an ordinary geometric plane and then map an image onto it, because then when you go into wireframe mode, you won't be able to see the image. But if you use an image plane, the special object, then it'll always display the image and you won't have any headaches. Just as with any images in Maya, or really in any 3D program, you need to place the image into the appropriate folder before you create the object or material. This is super important, and I cannot stress this enough. Before you create an image plane or a material texture, you have to find your image and then place it into the appropriate folder inside the current project. And once it's inside there, then it's okay for you to create the image plane or texture and link to the file inside your current project. Really, you should never link to any file that's outside of your current project, because that defeats the purpose of projects completely. The idea of projects is that they are self-contained and therefore portable. You can take your project and copy it and move it to a completely different computer, even to a different operating system. And as long as you've done it right, all your links will be preserved. Okay, so to do it right, you find your file and put it into your project before you create your image plane or texture. I'm going to minimize Maya. Here's my image, picture of a wine glass, and I want to put it into my current project. I'll just copy it. Right-click and choose Copy. And my project is currently in My Documents, Maya, Projects, Revolve, and the special folder that images need to go into is Source Images. And you're going to be intimately familiar with source images. You'll be using this on a daily basis. Open that up and then paste your file in there. And there it is. All right, so it's in there, and now it's okay for me to create my image plane. And I'll go back to Maya. To create the image plane, go into the Create menu and choose Free Image Plane. And we get a little rectangle object here. Currently, it does not have an image applied to it. And I can zoom in on that in a couple different ways. By the way, I can use Alt and right mouse. Since it's selected, I can also press the F key on the keyboard, and that will frame the selected object. Let's apply the image. To apply that image, we need to go into a window called the Attribute Editor. And the Attribute Editor is probably the most important window in all of Maya. It's really the heart of the program. And you can get at it over here in a couple of ways. You may see a tab over here, and you can click on that tab. You can also click on these buttons up here. These are kind of cryptic, but these will let you open or close the various things like the Attribute Editor. So I can click on that, and that'll open or close it. I can open and close the channel box as well. What I like to do is actually tear the Attribute Editor off to a separate window. And that's really useful, especially if you have a 2-monitor setup. You can place the Attribute Editor on your second monitor and just leave it there all the time because you need it constantly. There's also a keyboard shortcut for the Attribute Editor, and that's Control-A. Unlike every other program, usually Control-A means select all. In Maya, Control-A means open the Attribute Editor. And I'm going to tear it off. Just this little textured bar here, click on that and drag, and now the Attribute Editor is in a separate window. If I want to, I can close it. And to get it back, once again, Control-A. The Attribute Editor will show you the attributes or properties of the selected object only. I have to have the image plane selected in order to see its attributes here. If I click off of it, I will see nothing. Got to click it or drag a rectangle around it to select it. All right, so here we go. In this window now, we have all kinds of controls, and it'll depend upon what you have selected. You'll see all different stuff here. Each one of these tabs here is a node. So image plane 1 is the transform node, and that stores the positional, rotational, scale information and things like display and so on. And then image plane shape 1 is the image plane node, and that stores all the specific image plane attributes. And here's where we can navigate to find the actual file, image name. Click on the folder to browse, and it should take you directly to your current project source images. If for some reason you get taken somewhere else, all you have to do is click on over here, source images. So if I click on scenes, it takes me to my current scenes. If I click on source images, it takes me to my current source images. And I want to select that. What you don't want to do is start navigating around to some random place on your computer or your network and link to that. That's almost always going to be a problem. You want to link to files that are locally inside your current project. And I've done that now. So I've selected it and then click Open. Once we've browsed and chosen the image in our current source images folder, then it's applied onto the image plane, and we can also see its path here. And you'll see the path begins with the word source images. And there's nothing before that. This is what's known as a relative path. It's relative to the current project. And Maya currently has no knowledge of where that file is, except that it's inside the current project and inside a folder called source images inside the current project. If you see a drive letter or a volume name here, then that's a problem. You never want to see that in Maya or really in any 3D program. If you see a drive letter or a volume name, that means it's an absolute path. And your 3D program is going to go looking for that file in that specific location from now on forever into the future. And if you need to move that file or change the name of the path or do any changes really at all, then the path is going to get broken and the file will not be found. You'll get an error message and you'll be sad. And you'll have to then take extreme measures in order to fix the problem. If your links to dependent files get broken, you can fix them using the file path editor if you actually have the files physically. We're not going to cover that in this lesson. We just want to do it correctly to begin with in this case. All right, so that's a relative path and everything's fine. Next thing we want to do is just size it up, make it larger, because currently it's too small. I need it to be 8 inches in height. The glass itself is 7.75 inches, but I need to take into account the fact that the image itself is slightly larger than the glass. Scroll down here. Keep going down until you see width and height. And you'll see maintain pick aspect ratio is on, and that means that it's going to look at the image and determine what shape it is. My image is a perfect square, so it's going to just give the same value for width and height. But if I had an oblong shape, that shape would be preserved as a rectangular aspect ratio. When I type in one value, the other value will update automatically. In this case, since it's a square, it doesn't matter which I choose, either width or height. I just type in a value of 8 and press enter. And now the image is 8 inches in height and 8 inches wide. Cool. All right. Now, just to make things neat and clean, I probably want to move the image plane up so it's above the ground plane here. And I can do that from the channel box. I can close the attribute editor. With the image plane selected, you will see we have those image plane attributes visible over here, just like we saw in the attribute editor. The channel box really just shows a limited version of the attribute editor. But I'm not currently seeing the transform node, which is what I really need. To get that, what I can do is I can click off the object and then reselect it. And now I've got access to the transforms. I just want to move it up 4 inches in Y. Maya is a Y up system. So if I want to move it vertically or elevation, set the Y value to 4 inches and press enter. And now it's up above the ground plane. And once again, of course, I can navigate in my view using Alt and middle mouse or Alt and right mouse. And finally, I probably want to move the image plane back into the scene a little bit just to make room for the glass itself. I can select it and just select it and grab the move tool and just push it back in the Z-axis some amount. Or I could type it in directly here, maybe -12. And you'll see the orthographic view didn't change when I did that because the ortho view here is 2D. There's no indication of depth in an orthographic view, so I can push this forward or back and it doesn't change size here. All right, just set it to exactly -12. Cool, so we've got our image plane sorted out. We can go back to the attributes one more time, Control A, And I just want to show you one other cool thing you can do is you can change the colors here and the transparency. So if you want to dim down the image, we can reduce the color gain. If we want to brighten it up or basically increase its black point, we can bring the color offset up. What I really want to do is just make it semi-transparent. Bring that alpha gain down to about half because I need that. Otherwise, I won't be able to see the curves as I draw them. So bring that alpha gain down to, let's say, 0.5. Okay, now we're at a good place where we can actually save our first version of the file. And I do recommend that you store multiple versions of everything, even something simple like this. I never have just one version of anything in Maya. It's so easy to run into problems in a 3D program, especially a complicated one like Maya, that you need to have an insurance policy. You need a time machine. You need to go back to yesterday or 10 minutes ago before you did some destructive command that messed up your scene. So to avoid future problems, always version your files. Always create a new file every time you save. Don't keep saving over the same file over and over again. If you do, you're going to run into a problem where you need to go back to an earlier version, but that version doesn't exist because you saved over the top of it. Maya makes it really easy for you to version, and that's a feature called Increment and Save. But in order to use Increment and Save, you have to do something really kind of special and tricky. And let me show you. Go into the File menu and choose Save Scene. The very first time that you save your scene, you need to name it in a very specific and kind of idiosyncratic fashion. I'm going to call this one Revolve, and then I have to put in a dot or a period, and then the number 0001. And then finally, only in this case, this is a bit inconsistent in Maya, but only in this case, I need to also manually put in the file extension. Usually Maya will drop the file extension in for you automatically. There's two types of files in Maya. There's ASCII, which is a text file, and there's binary, which is a non-human readable zeros and one binary file. Almost always you want to use the ASCII file because then you can actually open it up and read it and hack it directly if you need to. The default file is actually Maya binary, and you'll see it says Maya MB there, but I actually want it to be a Maya ASCII. So you need to type in revolve.0001.ma. Once you've done that, from now on, you can use the command to increment and save, and the next file you create will be called revolve.0002.ma. So you don't actually have to keep typing in numbers in order to increment your file version. It just happens automatically. But again, in order for that to work, you have to set it up this way to begin with. And click Save As. Okay, so that first file has been created. And we can see down here it says result scenes revolve.0001.ma.